Welcome to Murder and Everything Else. My name is Joy.
And my name is Cheryl. Joy and I are two very old friends who love to talk about murder and everything else. So welcome back, fishes. So I've been sharing with Joy that I've gone down a rabbit hole about the King of Pop, also known as Michael Jackson. And I just want to say a short thing because we have to be mindful of Elena time. But if anyone watched Leaving Neverland and was very affected by that, I highly encourage you to watch a 4-part documentary on YouTube called Loving Neverland. That's all I have to say right now until I actually do a deep dive episode on the King of Pop.
Interesting. Well, did we do an episode on that docuseries?
Which one?
The one where the two guys come out and talk about their allegations of abuse.
That's Leaving Neverland.
Leaving Neverland. Did we do an episode on that? I can't even remember.
No, we did not.
Okay.
That would take, we could do one. We could talk about it. We could talk about it briefly. I'll tell
you what we are going to do. I'm going to watch that P. Diddy one and we're going to talk about that too.
Okay.
You know, I watched the R. Kelly one. That one was crazy.
Yeah, I did too. I have not. I sporadically check into the P. Diddy one. So Loving Neverland came out about a year, I want to say, after Leaving Neverland. And did you hear about it? I didn't.
No.
It's incredible. It's like all the negative press about Michael Jackson is
outweighed the positive.
Far outweighing. It's in the forefront of the news everywhere. But the things that exonerate him or at least come to his defense, the different evidence and all of that, it's buried in the background. I can't believe I've never heard of this documentary. But anyway, it's called Loving Neverland. It's on YouTube. It's interesting because some of the comments, I don't know where the commenters were commenting from, but they said the 4th part of the series was banned in whatever country they were. So it's very interesting how we want to hide or quash the evidence in defense of Michael. I think it's really, really sad. So that's all I want to say today is that if you watched Leaving Neverland, you need to watch Loving Neverland to give you a broader perspective.
I wonder what happened to all those animals. Remember he had like a monkey and a giraffe?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I'll have to look into that for when we actually do a deeper dive into it.
So interesting.
I do know Bubbles. Remember Bubbles, his chimpanzee? When it got to be too big and too aggressive, they sent it to a not a zoo, but some type of I don't know. I can talk about that too. But I'm glad that he didn't, he was realistic about it and didn't keep a full-grown chimp in his house because that would have been another story.
So there are these guys who go to like abandoned villages and towns and amusement parks, and they went to Neverland. It's basically a ghost town. Everything's falling down and stuff.
And they sold it. And they sold it, and it's back to its original name, which I can't think of right now because I'm not ready to present the facts. I just wanted to say that. You need to check out Loving Neverland.
First of all, you need to all go and check in on your undocumented or immigrant friends. See how they're doing, see if they need help. That's all I'm going to say about that, because guess what? Some of them do need help, and some of them just need us to make sure that they know that we have been thinking about them, that we are checking in on them.
Right, that we care.
Contrary to popular belief in the news right now, not all immigrants or undocumented people are criminals and gangsters and, drug runners and traffickers and horrible people. Some of them are very, very nice, functional members of our communities, and we need to make sure they're all doing okay.
Yep.
Anyway, last weekend we were at a volleyball tournament all weekend, and guess what? My kid and her team took gold at the tournament. It was so exciting.
So awesome. Congratulations.
It was great, but I just have a little advice for the people who put these on. They always have concessions, and it's always chicken fingers and French fries. Like, could we have a salad or something? Something healthy. Something. This one, Cheryl, had booze. Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's for the parents who have to spend a whole day there.
Yeah.
Are you going to be picketing outside with a sign?
That's right. More veggies. And the other thing is anyone who wants to do a deep dive into that Micah and James Stauffer docuseries, it's a 3-part series and it's on HBO Max. So go watch it. All 3 episodes are up there. I feel like they could have done it in 2 episodes. Cheryl and I are probably going to do a deep dive episode on that in a week or 2, maybe 3. But just letting you know, it's out there. So go and watch it. They were family vloggers. And just to jog anyone's memory, they adopted a little boy from China and then rehomed him. So I talked about it briefly on last week's episode when I was talking about Ruby Frankie. Cheryl, do you have any updates?
I do. So there is a juror from the Richard Allen trial. You guys, I talked about this from the Delphi murders. He was found guilty of Abby and Libby's murders. So one of the jurors spoke, and lawyer, played a part of it. That's where I listened to it. I didn't listen to it directly. The juror went on someone's podcast, and Peter Tragos, played parts of it. And I just have to tell you that all I have to say is yikes, 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 yikes. You know, when they say that when you're on trial, Joy, when you're on trial,
Yeah.
you are being judged by a jury of your peers. Holy crap. If this is a peer, I don't want to offend, but man, she didn't sound like the sharpest knife in the drawer or the whatever in the shed. And it makes me even more upset about his trial, and especially the outcome, because I did not feel he got a fair trial. And in listening to this juror, so I heard a YouTuber say, this is not from my mouth, but I also couldn't contradict it. He said, some juries are made up of random ass people with questionable intelligence. I'm not saying that that's what this jury was, but this juror, yikes, is all I can say. You guys got to go listen to it for yourself. If I were on trial, I would not want her to be one of the jurors.
Yeah.
That's all I want to say about that.
Interesting. If you guys followed that trial, head over there and see what this juror has to say. I can tell you I did not follow that trial, so I don't even know what Cheryl's talking about.
Well, you can listen to our podcast.
Oh, yeah, that's true. You can do that. Hey, rolling into shout outs. I talked about being at a volleyball tournament this last weekend. And while I was there, I ran into superfan Amy. Hey, Amy. Amy shared with me that she was in her car with her 13-year-old daughter at Christmas, and she was listening to our little short episode on ticks, tasty ticks. And she said that her daughter laughed out loud, and she asked her mom about listening to the rest of our podcast. But sadly, she's too young. But shout out to our 13-year-old fan. You know who you are. Daughter of Amy. I'm not going to say your name. So just think, like, when you get to be a little older, like, I don't know, 15 or 16, you can go and listen to all of them and just laugh your ass off. So thanks, Amy, for introducing the offspring to the podcast.
Yeah.
Anyway, Cheryl, you got a shout out?
I do have a shout out. So, Joy and I have become fans of Conan O'Brien. We act like he's something new, like he hasn't been around for 30 years or whatever.
Right.
But Joy told me about this limited series on Max. Was it on Max? Anyway, it's called Conan Must Go, and I recommend it to anyone who likes Conan O'Brien. Hilarious. He travels. What is it? They had like 4 locations, I think.
Yeah. He goes
Hilarity ensues.
to Norway, he goes to Argentina, he goes to Thailand, and then
And
the
of course,
last one he goes
Ireland.
to the motherland, Ireland.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And he is so freaking funny.
So funny. If you guys need something lighthearted and uplifting, I need it in between all my murders. I recommend it. So funny, so enjoyable. Conan Must Go.
That's awesome. Anyway, guys, this week we're back with more murder. Hey, Elena, I just want you to know we really kept that short and sweet, by the way. I think we literally talked for less than 10 minutes. So,
Woohoo!
talk about keeping the intro tiny. But we're heading back to murder this week. Cheryl's got something really great and gory and creepy crawly for us, right, Cheryl?
Yeah, it's all murders are gory in one sense, in some sense or another, but this one is for sure. Today we are going to talk about the Apple River stabbing. Was it murder or self-defense? And I don't know if a lot of people have heard about this. In the true crime community on YouTube, it was all over the place. And of course, that's where I found it. But before I begin, my sources are Fox 9, Hudson Star Observer, CBS News, YouTube's Midwest Safety, Court TV, and also Wikipedia. July 30th, 2022, at 3:47 p.m. in Wisconsin, 911 calls are flooding the lines. Due to the high volume of calls, many of them never connect to an operator. One caller that does connect says, "We are on the Apple River. We got one guy bleeding out his guts right now."
Whoa.
Another caller tearfully exclaims, "Oh my God, oh no, he's dead." And yet another caller shouts excitedly, "There was a guy who was harassing a group of teenagers. We were trying to get him to go away, and all of a sudden he just started stabbing people."
Whoa.
But of course, the situation is not as simple as that. And today we will be discussing the events that led to the stabbings on the Apple River in Wisconsin. Joy, I honestly don't know how to feel about this incident. Most times I have a definitive opinion on whether I thought someone was guilty or not, or who was at fault, or, whatever the case may be.
Like
But I honestly,
OJ.
yeah, that we might have to do a throwback on that one. But I honestly don't know how to feel about this incident because there were young people behaving foolishly and there was an older person behaving foolishly. So I want to know what you think about this. So the Apple River is a 77.5-mile long tributary of the St. Croix River in northwestern Wisconsin in the United States.
I think it's
Apple River,
pronounced St. Croix.
St. Croix. Of course it is. I was just checking to see if you were paying attention. I was testing you.
Is that like Reuters?
I was testing you, says Bobby Lee.
Oh,
Okay,
you're
Apple River. Apple River is a popular destination for tubers. Every time I say that, I want to say for YouTubers, but it's a popular destination for tubers. It's a slow-moving river with gentle curves, making it perfect to float lazily down the river. I looked it up on TripAdvisor, and these were the first 2 comments that I came across. The first comment was, "From what I understand, it gets pretty rowdy on weekends. Lots of beer being consumed, and bathing suit tops become optional." The second comment was, "The Somerset area Apple River tubing has made attempts at reining in the rowdy behavior, but I would still be cautious if tubing with a family." On the morning of Saturday, July 30th, 2022, 52-year-old Nikolai Mew, who I will refer to as Nick going forward, and his wife Sandra leave their home in Prior Lake, Minnesota. They plan to meet friends and spend the day floating the Apple River. And if you're curious, it was about an hour and 11-minute drive from where their home was in Minnesota to the Apple River in Wisconsin. Nick was born in Romania. When he was a teenager, about 15 or 16, he immigrated to the United States because his father wanted his family to have a better life. They were taken in as political refugees and accepted by a church in Minnesota. Nick wasn't in the best of health. In 2020, he had had a heart attack and a quadruple bypass, and it made him feel fragile. At approximately 11:30 a.m., Nick, Sandra, and their friends began their float down the river. It was common for groups of people to tie their tubes together as they float. Nick brought his pocket knife with him that day because his friend asked him to bring it. They were going to tie their tubes together and probably needed to cut the rope. Nick also
I've
brought.
done this. Have
You
I ever
have
told you? Yeah. So
on the Apple River?
no, but I went to Texas one year, and I remember we went to an actual like river and floated for like a couple of hours in inner tubes. And the thing that stuck out was there was a group of either Mennonite or Amish or like some, like very conservative religious group that wears like the women wear like long skirts with
Hmm.
long sleeves and like handkerchiefs on their heads or something. And they had bathing dresses that were weighted with weights at the bottom so that the dresses don't float up.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they were floating down the river because I remember being so amazed that they were floating down wearing like fully clothed. It
They
was
weren't
so
drowning, is what you were amazed at, that they weren't being
right.
pulled down by the.
But I also felt like I was in the 1800s because these
Right?
outfits are pretty like outdated.
Wow, I don't understand that. And it's so hot and uncomfortable.
Well,
But
the dresses were all wet, so they were probably pretty chilled out by that point. But
uh,
I mean, as somebody who was wearing like postage stamp size bathing suit, I can tell you that either I stuck out next to them or they stuck out next to me because we were dressed completely different.
they were overdressed for sure.
Right?
In addition to his knife, Nick also brought his snorkel and goggles. A few hours later, one of the friends in his group loses their cell phone, and Nick volunteers to look for it using his snorkel and goggle. He leaves the group to look for the phone. The rest of his group continue on a little further down the river, and then they get off and hang out on the bank of the river. What happens next is captured on video from one of the group of teenagers that were nearby. The video is jerky and chaotic. Nick is seen sort of running up to them, kind of stumbling toward them, toward the group of teenagers as they're on their tubes. They get off of their tubes and they start yelling and laughing. Ha, what the hell are you doing? Get away from us. And Nick has not said a word up until now. He backs away, says something unintelligible, and points towards the teenagers. And then one of the teenagers can be heard shouting, "For the culture, for the culture." Don't know what that means, but it's indicative of a bunch of young people getting together, right? And he's like, "For the culture, for the culture." Another one yells, "He's looking for little girls." They repeatedly shout and call him a pedophile. Nick does not leave the area, and the teens start to surround him, taunting and yelling things at him. And
Well,
he has a very.
can I just stop you right here? I will say that when you first said that he brought goggles and what did he bring besides the goggles?
Snorkel.
Snorkel. I'm like, why would you need snorkels and a goggles when you're going inner tubing
Wow.
unless you want to go under the water and look at people's butts?
Joy,
Seriously.
this is why I hang around you.
No,
Do you know
seriously. I literally
has
was like, the only reason to have snorkel and goggles when you're doing something, I mean, this is inner tubing for fuck's sake.
it's to look under the water.
It comes it comes off as a little bit odd.
That is so, it's fascinating. You guys, I know I've said this many times, but one of the reasons I wanted to do the podcast, besides hearing myself talk about murder, is that I wanted Joy's opinion. I wanted to discuss things with you. And this whole time that I've listened to this, because I followed this trial a while ago when it happened. That never came across my mind.
Well, I'll tell you why it comes across mine. So when I was in high school, we used to have to swim sometimes. What they would do is the girls would swim laps while the PE teacher would take the boys over to the deep end and they would practice diving off the diving board. And one of the things that I said to my friend was, hey, if you duck under the water every time one of the boys dives in, sometimes their shorts fall off. And you could see their junk. So at one point, we're all lined up, all the girls, and every time a guy dives in, our heads duck under the water. And you can see us, and then we come up, we're like, yep, I saw pubes. Yep, high five, high five.
Oh.
Yep, I saw junk. Except for the gross guys. We didn't want to see their junk or their pubes. We just wanted to see the cute guys' junk and pubes. So
That is hilarious.
That it comes off as a little bit creepy. Now, remember, I was in high school looking at high school guys, okay? This is a 52-year-old man at a family place who is
ducking.
Yeah, it just comes off. I will tell you that as the parent of 2 kids, if I had taken my minor children and saw a guy getting in the water on his inner tube with snorkels and goggles, I'd be like, we're not going to go anywhere near him, because why does he need that?
In a river. Yeah, it's not like you're, at the beach where there's fish and I don't know.
And also, if you lost your cell phone, you would wait. Everyone would get off their inner tubes and you would look for it right then. Because what's the point in going back to look for the cell phone?
Well, if they dropped it and they floated, then he has to go back up the river, right, to where he thinks it was dropped.
I don't know.
But anyway, that brings up a really good point. Although I thought when you said the teachers took the boys over to dive in the deep end, I thought you were going to talk about equality and why the girls had to stay in the shallow end and the boys are diving.
But then they would switch it, and the realization was that when we were diving in, the guys were probably doing the
Exactly.
I don't know. I mean, high school boys, I don't know. You tell me. I will say this. There was a lot of boys in my high school who didn't wear shorts that adequately adhered to their bodies.
Probably because they knew you guys were looking. But yes, it's a whole different thing for it to be high schoolers to high schoolers, but that's fascinating. I did not even think. Yep. And none of the things that all the news clips and the different YouTubers and stuff I've read, no one has brought up that fact. Like, what was he doing with snorkeling goggles? And somebody write in. If you go
like, think about it. A river is going to be not the same kind of water that a swimming pool is. It might be murky. It might have like sediment from the bottom that's like floated up. So again, it doesn't seem like snorkel and goggles is really effective. And also, if there's a lot of people stomping around,
yes, it's going to be
you're going to be kicking up sediment and stuff. It doesn't make sense that he would have brought that.
Wow, fascinating. Joy, you are the best.
Carry on. I'm here. I'm just doing my job, folks.
Okay. This is why I stick with her, you guys. I chose my co-host wisely. They're surrounding him, they're taunting him, they're yelling things at him, the teenagers, and he has a very odd look on his face. If you watch any video or any clip, you will see one of the things that stands out is he has this very weird look on his face. I don't know if it's sort of a smirk. I don't know if it's confusion. I don't know if he was scared. I don't know, but it's hard to say. It's hard to say what was on his mind, but he just stands there while the teens are taunting and yelling at him, and they continue to shout. He's looking for little girls. And you also hear someone in the teen group say to Nick, "You have 10 seconds. At one point, Nick raises his arm toward his group as if he's summoning one of them to come over and help him. The teens tell him to leave and get away from them. Some young adults nearby hear the commotion and come over to help see what's going on. A couple of the girls, or I should say young women from that other group, are seen very close up on Nick. One of them has her hand on his arm. Within 30 seconds, one of the women, Madison Cohen, is allegedly struck by Nick. The video does not capture this. A fight ensues with teens Dante and Tony Carlson and AJ Martin punching and pushing Nick into the river. The water is very shallow where they are, so he hits his head on the rock on the bottom, and while he's down, someone slaps him across the face. He tries to stand up and he's pushed back down into the river, falling on his butt again. Nick later testifies that while he is down, someone comes from behind him and pushes him to keep him down in the water. We have only the perspective of the person videoing the event. And at one point, the camera swings to the side, the phone swings to the side, and one of the teens, Isaac Schumann, is lying on his back holding his stomach. In a matter of seconds, the scene of bullying and chastising changes to one of panic and pandemonium. Shock and fear take over as victims bleed into the river, realizing they have been stabbed as friends scramble to help them. Nick walks away from the scene in the company of his friend, Ariel Chaguez. Is that how you pronounce it? My smart friend.
I don't know, but I will say this, Cheryl. Who takes a knife to a lazy river?
Well, there was testimony from people in Nick's group that the friend did say he asked Nick to bring it. Now, it could be as innocent. Well, it could be as innocent as
like you're in the water, so it's gonna get wet and it's metal.
Well, yeah, but
what if you stab your inner tube inadvertently because he must have had it in some kind of holster situation?
I don't know, and I don't know if it opened up. I think it was just open. I do know I do know that something was said about cutting the rope, and they might need it for things like that. Don't quote me on this. This part, what I'm about to say is, I'm not sure if I heard it, but I thought I heard when I was listening to it back last year when it came out that I think he was kind of accustomed to carrying sort of like a Swiss Army, pocket knife, where it's like you don't know. I carry scissors all the time. I carry scissors wherever because you just don't know where you're going to need it. So it could have been one of those things. You'll have to ask him himself. I don't know. As I mentioned earlier, at 3:47 p.m., the first 911 call is made. When deputies arrive, they find 4 victims with stab wounds. Deputies on scene find 17-year-old Isaac Schumann dead and 4 others injured. Riley Madison, AJ Martin, Dante Carlson, and Tony Carlson. Nick left the scene and later lied to the authorities, claiming the knife he used in the attacks belonged to one of the teens. He says that he got it from them somehow. The knife was found by the bridge near where the stabbings occurred. Nick had changed clothes and was preparing to leave with his group when witnesses pointed him out to law enforcement, and he was then arrested.
Okay, let me just also stop you here.
Yeah.
So he walks away from the scene in the company of his friend Ariel Chaguez, or whatever Chug is. He has stabbed 4 people. One is laying on his back holding his stomach. There's got to be blood in the water.
Yeah, there's blood in the water.
So you're walking away with your friend Ariel. How drunk are you and Ariel that you're walking away? And I'm sorry, but if you are wielding a knife and you have stabbed 4 people, you probably also have blood on your own person. And remember, he's changed his clothes and he's preparing to leave with his group. So no one in your group thought, hey, we should probably call someone.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? To me, the fact that he has changed his clothes and he's discarded the weapon would indicate to me that he knows he has done something very, very wrong.
Exactly.
Again, you don't take all your money out of the bank, get your passports and your birth certificates and all of your legal documents and put them in a bag and take him, in the car while you're being chased by the police if you're an innocent person.
Right, exactly. I know. It's incredible. So, but witnesses pointed him out because he was dressed differently. Well, he didn't have a shirt on in the video. And I don't think law enforcement is shown the video at that time. But witnesses even though he's redressed, they see him and they point him out and he's arrested. So on August 1st of 2022, that year, Nick was charged with first-degree intentional homicide and 4 counts of attempted first-degree intentional homicide. So I just want to emphasize something, that there were 5 people stabbed, 1 died. So Isaac Schumann was dead when the deputies arrived, and then 4 others were injured. On August 16th, 2022, a memorial was held for Isaac Schumann. Nick's trial began on April 1st, 2024. Nick's friend Ariel took the stand to testify. He said Nick has a character of peacefulness. Ariel was part of Nick's tubing group, like I said earlier. It was Ariel's girlfriend that had dropped his phone in the river, prompting Nick to go back and look for it with his snorkel. Ariel testified that Nick's wife said Nick was in trouble, so his girlfriend took him to go look to see what was going. So his girlfriend told him go to look to see what was going on. Remember when Nick like motioned to them for somebody to come? And Ariel said he walked down the river toward where Nick was. He saw Nick getting bullied by a group of young people who were hitting him and threw his snorkel. Someone then pushed Nick down and hit him, and then Nick defended himself. That's what Ariel says. And then Nick took the stand and said, I was afraid for my life, and what I did, I had to do to defend myself. If I quote him and it sounds a little off, he does have an accent. So it's the way he phrases things. He said after the stabbings, he turned and made his way back to his group. Nick said he realized he had soiled himself during the physical altercation, and probably more that it was blood, like you said, right? He had blood on him.
Time out. When you say he soiled himself, did he go pee or did he go poop?
He just said he soiled himself. They didn't ask for clarification when he was on the stand.
That's interesting.
But I think more what he meant was that he probably put it that way, but like you said, he probably had blood on him, right? Mm-hmm. So that's when he changed. But he described his head as being thick and in a fog. He remembered tossing the knife on the riverbank, and when asked why he threw the knife away, he said, I don't know. I was afraid. I felt like I had to throw it away. In his last line of questioning, defense attorney Aaron Nelson emphasized how Nick believed he was under attack. Did you believe you needed to use that knife? Nelson asked. Absolutely, Nick insisted. I believe I would have been killed that day. Prosecutors asked Nick about his decision to go look for his friend's lost phone, a moment that would lead to the encounter with the teens and another group. Nick was questioned about why he took off his shirt and his hat before going snorkeling, but failed to take the knife out of his pocket. Prosecutor Brian Smested, some of these names, I'm calling him Smested, questioned why it was with him, insinuating he was preparing for trouble. They referred to images that captured him touching the knife in his pocket when the teens began yelling at him. So when they break this video down and they freeze frame on some of the positioning and whatever of people, he is seen touching his pocket.
Interesting.
The prosecution then asked Nick why he kept going when the teens made it clear they didn't want him around, and noted that at one point he was returning to his group until one of the boys called him a raper. Prosecutors then noted that videotape captured Nick grabbing the teens' tubes and touching their legs. Whoa, 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 someone in Isaac Schumann's group was heard saying on videotape. Now, there was testimony, or he may have said it himself, that he stumbled and to catch his balance, he touched their legs. So when I say touching their legs, you can't picture him just touching and rubbing it. It was like I said earlier, he kind of stumbled towards them. He admitted that at one point he purposely stood in the way of the teens' tubes so they could not get past.
But let me ask you this. Did they ask Ariel where his girlfriend dropped the phone? Was it in that area? Did they corroborate that it was in that area? Because the fact of the matter is it just seems to me like, first of all, it was Ariel, and it was Ariel's phone that his girlfriend dropped. Why doesn't Ariel go look for the phone?
Right. I know.
Why doesn't the girlfriend go look for the phone? Why is Nick heading off by himself? Also by himself. Like, if Ariel said, man, I'm going to go back and look for my cell phone, do you think maybe you could come with me? That would be one thing. But Nick didn't even drop the phone. And now he's going to head off with a snorkel
With a
and
snorkeling
goggle
goggle.
and be videoed grabbing teenagers' legs. I'm sorry, but I'm getting a super creeper feeling.
This is so interesting because I will tell you that even though I said earlier I didn't know how to feel about this, I didn't really have a strong feeling for murder, whether it's murder or self-defense. I did kind of feel like he definitely was in a predicament, like he was outnumbered like 13-1. So I felt like, the teenagers and the way they were behaving and how, I don't know, but you speaking, this is exactly why I love it. This is exactly why I wanted to bring these types of cases to you, because you have put you've given me a whole different perspective on it,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. So I can't answer why Ariel didn't go look for himself. Um,
It just
but
doesn't
it,
make any sense. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, for example, when my husband and I had been married for 2 months, we went on a camping trip with our friends, Joan Lamont and a bunch of their friends. And they took us to this really cool dam. It's called Boundary Dam. And it's kind of like right between like Canada and Washington State. And it's absolutely beautiful. We camped, we cooked out, we water skied, we went in the water, we inner tubed, and we spent like 4 or 5 days out there. It was really, really fun. And the water is freezing cold because it's coming off of some, I don't know, iceberg in the middle of Canada. But you dive down into the water, and how your fingers get smaller. Well, my husband dove down, and his wedding ring, which he's only been wearing for 2 months, his finger got smaller and it slipped
Hmm.
off his finger and went into this dam, into this
Hmm.
river, I mean.
Hmm.
So he dove down several times looking for it with goggles, without goggles. He couldn't find it. It's a river. So he just got on the boat, and I just chalked it up to, well, it's a really bad omen. It's 2 months after I got
Oh,
married.
yeah.
My husband's never going to have a wedding ring because we couldn't afford that ring. What makes me think we're going to be able to afford another one? The next day before we left, we took the boat over to this area. There was a waterfall, by the way, above the area where he lost it. It was this
Oh
really pretty
God.
waterfall. He
Yeah, but
literally, it was like 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock in the morning. It's very early, so it's a lot cooler. He dove into the water, went down, and guess what? He found it.
wow, that's a
And
sign. And
yeah,
20 years later.
well, he then proceeded to, like, 4 years later, sew it up inside of an aardvark at the Sacramento Zoo. So I don't know.
What?
I always like to joke around that I'm actually married to an aardvark. No, I don't know what happened to it. I don't even know if it was an aardvark. I think he says that when he went to scrub in for surgery, somebody must have picked up the ring and walked off with it because it was a really nice ring. So he doesn't have the ring now anyway. But I will say this. If there had been a family with children swimming around that waterfall, my husband would not have gone over there and started looking for it.
Hmm.
So I will say that I do not believe for a second that this guy was just generally looking around for his friend's cell phone.
Oh, that's
He
so
he would
interesting.
not, a 52-year-old man with a brain, like, and I'm not trying to disparage this person in any way, shape, or form, but a 52-year-old with common sense and with understanding of how the world works would not have gone back in a group full of teenagers who had been drinking and who are wearing skimpy bathing suits and thought, I'm going to stagger over here and look for this cell phone. He would have said, you know what? Maybe we'll come back when there's not as many people at the river and we'll look for it then.
Wow.
Because it's just not something that, and remember, like, we didn't have kids at that point. So we didn't even have the relationship with having children. It's
Hmm.
just common sense to me. And also, it's a respect. These kids are partying and hanging out in a river on a hot summer's day. The respect level would have been, our group's going to stay over here. your group's going to stay over there. And also, they're a bunch of teenagers. I'm a 52-year-old man. So I'm just saying that it comes off super, super Creepsville.
But that's so interesting. You have definitely swayed how I felt, because I guess I did feel a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like
And also, Cheryl, if a bunch of teenagers were taunting me or my husband or somebody else, I mean, we've been around teenagers. We would just be like, whatevs, and walk away. I'm sorry. You're not going to get into a
Oh yeah,
screaming
I
match
wouldn't
with
either.
a teenager because you're not going to win.
Gonna get anywhere. Yeah, yeah. You're definitely complicating your day. That's for
Yeah.
sure. Like I, that's so fascinating, because one of the things that I felt it made me feel a certain way was the kids and how they were acting, and how, how this could happen to anyone. But now that I'm talking to him, like, well,
Mhm.
no, it
And the
couldn't,
other thing
because he
is,
should have
kids,
just walked away.
yeah, kids have a really good barometer for what's creepy and what's not creepy. And I can tell you that after having kids and having teenagers, when they come to me and say, this person is being super creepy, they're not just pulling it out of their ass. Like, usually it involves somebody who's being really creepy.
Mm. God, that's so fascinating. So when he was on the stand, he's asked about his strange smile. Remember, I mentioned that he had this weird look on his face. He's asked about that strange smile during the altercation, and he responds, "I'm not smiling. I'm confused and annoyed." The prosecution then turned to the physical exchange that involved Nick, Madison Cohen, and Dante Carlson. Madison was one of the women who was from the group that was nearby that heard them yelling and had gone up to Nick. Their group was also drinking. Nick admitted he did something physical to Madison to set things off. He says, "She was in my face. I could smell the alcohol on her breath."
So what did he do?
Smested,
Did he push her? Did he kick her?
well, everyone there, most of the people that were right there said he punched her.
Oh.
So the prosecutor continued to press Nick, detailing how after being pushed down into the river, Nick put the blade of his knife in AJ Martin's belly and ripped upwards. And this is the guy who was holding his intestines in, AJ Martin. And he was on the stand, and he got up and he did show the jury this gnarly scar that he has from that attack. The prosecution said after stabbing Martin, nobody was physically engaged with Nick. No one was hitting or kicking him, and yet he still lunged and stabbed Tony Carlson twice as he stepped in to help his injured friends. At that point, Nick says, "I couldn't tell what was going on. I couldn't see, I couldn't hear. I was fearing for my life. I had merely seconds to think." Prosecutor told jurors that Nick stabbed Riley Madison and then Isaac Schumann as he tried to come to the woman's aid. The video showed Schumann trying to push Nick away with his hand on Nick's throat, and then Nick inflicting the fatal wound. So when you watch the video, everything happens so fast. It's only till it's slowed down and taken frame by frame do you actually see the people's hands and whatnot. And when they did a still frame, you did see Isaac's hand on Nick's throat. So I know when I saw it, I was like, well, geez, if someone has their hand around my throat, my instinct might be to fight back, right? But it happens so fast that when I did the research, and it's described this way, that Isaac was trying to push Nick away, and his hand was on his throat, but it wasn't like he was trying to choke him. It's happening so fast, so fast. I mean, people didn't even know people were being stabbed until it was over and there was blood in the river, and AJ's holding his intestines, and it was so fast. So the prosecutor says, as Isaac's pushing you, you stab him in the heart. When the prosecutor noted that none of the people whom Nick stabbed were armed, Nick agreed. The line of questioning during cross-examination inferred that Nick was looking for trouble himself and could have simply walked away. And now, after hearing your opinion on this, I'm feeling like that is it's summed up in one sentence that Nick was looking for trouble himself and could have simply walked away, which is so interesting because up until just now talking to you about this, I felt like it wasn't that simple. I felt like there was more to it. I was questioning the kids' behavior and all of that. But anyway, Nick was convicted on April 11th of 2024 of first-degree reckless homicide and the killing of Isaac Schumann, 4 counts of first-degree recklessly endangering safety in the stabbings of A.J. Martin, Dante Carlson, Tony Carlson, and Riley Madison, and battery of Madison Cohen, the woman that he punched. The judge sentenced Nick Mew to 20 years. Nick Mew became tearful as he addressed the court during his sentencing. He says, "I never meant for this tragedy to occur. My soul is broken. My soul is very heavy, and I will never be the same person carrying such a heavy burden inside. I pray to God for forgiveness and compassion for everyone," he said. "I'm hoping that you appreciate how much I'm sorry for the outcome of those events." Just an aside, the dude lost like 60 pounds. He was a skeleton at the trial. He's a very beefy guy when it happened. Isaac Schumann's mother describes him as a mother's dream. She says he was an honor roll student with a very bright future, kind, smart, talented, funny, helpful, and harmless. She said Isaac was supposed to golf that day. Oh, this is so heartbreaking. When I hear stuff like this, it's just, it makes me want to cry. She said Isaac was supposed to golf that day, but decided to golf later because his friend had to work. So he asked if he could go with some of his friends tubing on the Apple River. She said she hesitated and told him that his dad needed to be picked up from the airport that day. So Isaac then said he would pick him up instead of going to the river. But Isaac's mother said it was a beautiful July day. Hold on, I'm getting emotional. And she didn't want to send him to the airport if he could enjoy the day. She said Isaac wasn't part of the confrontation that day until he saw what he saw. He was standing in the back holding his tube, ready to leave. Isaac stepped in when he saw people's lives in danger and jumped in to help. She says, "I regret allowing him to go to the river every single day and not pick up his dad at the airport. I think about that day every day. I think about Isaac all day, every day." So, I mean, it's just one of those things, those what ifs, I hate that. Oh, it just, you put, like if he had gone to pick up his dad, he would be alive. It's like, I hate those kind of things. But, this whole self-defense and people that have been found guilty and not guilty, it brings up the Kyle Rittenhouse incident. Remember, he was the young man who gained national attention at age 17 for shooting 3 men in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Ironically enough, also in Wisconsin. He shot 2 fatally in August 2020 amid protests following the police shooting of Jacob Blake. He had traveled to Kenosha during the unrest and joined a group of armed people who said they were there to protect businesses.
I believe his mother drove him there.
Yep. In a series of confrontations, Rittenhouse fatally shot 2 men who had tried to grab his gun and non-fatally injured another who had pointed a handgun at him. Rittenhouse was charged by Kenosha County prosecutors with multiple criminal counts, including homicide. Rittenhouse claimed self-defense at trial and was acquitted in November of 2021. There are two lawsuits against him pending. But what do you think of that? He was looking for trouble. I mean, he said
was, and also, unfortunately for Kyle Rittenhouse, he then jumped on a political train and went to a bunch of rallies and was kind of used as fodder for, for like pro-gun, gun right advocates. I will also say that I think he enrolled in school and dropped out shortly after and he wrote a book and he claims that he doesn't have any money because he is such a politically charged individual that it makes it difficult for him to get a normal job. But I will also say that at the age of probably, I don't know, he was 17 when he killed those 2 men and injured a third. And he was a minor, so shame on his mom for saying, yeah, let's get in the car and go down there. Shame on whoever purchased the gun for him. And then also, by the time it went to trial and all that, so he was 17 in 2020. he was acquitted in 2021, so he was 18. And so now it's 2025, so he's what, 22? I can tell you that there's a lot of life after 22. So if you're 22 and this is already the sum of the experiences that you've had in your life, it's too bad, because where does he go from here?
Mhm.
He's
But
already killed 2 people and injured a third person. He's already been used for political fodder, and he's failed out of school, and he's kind of a laughing stock. So good luck. Like, maybe the people who are in charge of him, or the people who are like were in charge of him when he was a minor, should have maybe taken a little more care, because
mhm.
now his reputation precedes him. He probably will never have a normal life, and will wake up one day and say, I I got duped. I got duped by fame and fortune. I got duped by politics. I got duped by people using
Mhm.
me to,
Mhm.
fit their narrative. I had too much notoriety at too young of an age. Maybe my parent should not have driven me there that night. I mean, it's like,
So he's suffering a consequence in a different
mhm.
way.
Well,
Yeah.
somebody complicated his day, and now he's complicated it even more.
Yeah. But it's this whole self-defense thing. It's very interesting. I mean, I heard of this one case where this burglar breaks into someone's house and injures himself somehow, and he fucking sues them. This world is crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
I
think
have a
if you,
hard time feeling sorry for Kyle Rittenhouse, but I have an even harder time feeling sorry for this Nick Mew guy, because of the
mhm.
magnitude of his crime. We're talking about one armed 52-year-old man going up against a gaggle of teenagers.
But so now when this was out, when it was in the media, there were adults talking about how they would feel though if they were surrounded by, when you say they're, because they're teenagers, they're big, they're strong, they're not kids. I mean, you could technically call them kids, but they're not children. So there was a lot of talk about that. But I'm telling you, you have given me a different perspective, starting with the snorkel and the goggles. And
Yeah.
in all honesty, he was the adult, and
Mhm.
should have walked away. But it's just, I am fascinated. I hate to use that word because it sounds flippant. Someone died, and people were injured, severely injured, because I'm sure there's going to be repercussions from those injuries. But I'm just, it just boggles me sometimes how you go out to enjoy a day and shit happens. It's like that. That's the guys, the couple, the 2 guys that had gone to the movie theater, one old and one younger, and ends up
Mhm.
shooting another person in the theater, in a empty theater at a matinee. So it's I gravitate towards stories like this, I think, because I always feel like, what if that were me? What if I were there?
Well, this was a crazy, crazy crime. But you know what else is a crime?
What's that, Joy?
That we are out of time.
That is a crime. Well, thank you for listening, everyone. And as this story shows, don't complicate your day. All creativity, commentary, and opinions in this podcast belong to Cheryl and Joy. Music composed and mixed by Gabe McKeon. Logo and merch managed by Cheryl Yamaguchi. Podcast editing, advertising, and social media managed by Joy McKeon. Legal representation provided by John Bojezic. Please like, subscribe, follow, and listen. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Audible.com, Amazon Music, YouTube, and iHeartRadio. And remember, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok, or you can email us at murderandeverythingelse@gmail.com.
Bye, fishes.